We're live. Danny Dring, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Man, proud to be here. Awesome, man. What a great place.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. We've been working pretty hard to do this, and it's been kind of my lifelong dream of doing a podcast, and so here we are.
Here's the thing: is I walked in and I felt so at home. I'm like, this is all my stuff. He is one of my people. There's, animals on the wall. It looks like my office at my gym. I've got, weight equipment over here. I've got, gnarly rubs. I didn't even put that together at first. It just took me, and I was like, oh, of course. But I cook with that all the time. So I'm a huge fan. So I walked in and just like, oh, okay. I feel like I've been here before.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I'm going to give you like a quick, brief introduction just because of you have a lot of accolades. You've come from an extensive background of martial arts. And shout out to Steve Snyder for help put this on.
Oh, of course.
And so you are the owner of Living Defense Martial Arts in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. You're a 9th degree black belt Taekwondo. You're a 9th degree black belt Bill Superfoot Wallace. You're an 8th degree black belt under Joe Louis Fighting Systems. You're a 5th degree black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Your coach is Tony Emanuel.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you're also a reserve deputy for the Pulaski. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Pulaski County Sheriff's Office.
Sheriff's Office. And you've been there for how long?
34 years.
Oh, wow.
Now. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to just start really where kind of you grew up, kind of just a little timeline, where you grew up, how that looked, and then kind of how things evolved into the martial arts world.
Sure. I was actually born in Thunder Bay, Ontario in Canada. And my father was working in TV and got a job at WFRV TV Channel 5 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So when I was 3 years old, we moved to Green Bay. And we lived there for 3 years. And I'm going to age myself here, but Green Bay was NFL champions, Super Bowl I, Super Bowl II. So,
wow. Okay.
It was kind of my dad at the TV station, and, the Packers are a city-owned team. So being in the TV station, he knew Vince Lombardi, he knew Bart Starr, he knew Jerry Kramer, and Ray Nitschke, all the legends of that era. So it was kind of cool. We've been lifelong Packer fans. And
cheeseheads, they say.
Yeah, cheeseheads awesome. For sure. Then from there, my dad got a job offer and moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, and he worked for KTV Channel 7 in Little Rock. And so that's how we ended up in Arkansas. Been there ever since. I've been there since I was 6 years old. When I was about 7, my father and I actually trained in some martial arts together. We did a little bit of Taekwondo. And that time, man, it was early on. There wasn't a lot of, it wasn't like it is today where there's martial arts everywhere. I mean, there wasn't a lot of martial arts schools. Certainly not a lot of Taekwondo schools. So we got to train for a while, and then his hours changed at the TV station. It just wasn't possible for us to continue. But it was interesting. I mean, I got a taste of it. And growing up in Arkansas, you knew what season it was by the sport you played, right? So It was football in the fall, basketball in the winter, track in the spring, baseball in the summer.
Yep.
And those were basically the only sport. Soccer wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Arkansas didn't have wrestling until about 2005, 2006.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't. There was none in the state. That would have been a great sport.
That's surprising because of, Iowa, Missouri,
Oklahoma,
you
Texas,
have
around us, all around us, but Arkansas just didn't have it. Now we have it now. It's
right.
It's in the last 20 years. It's taken off. But when I was a kid, there was none. Wow. Nobody. It
was still kind of like pretty. I guess would the word be rural compared to like Missouri, Kansas? Because you're still kind of in that Midwest region, right?
For sure. And you think about it, it's amazing to me the terrain. I even mentioned this on the drive over here. this part of North Carolina reminds me a lot of the terrain in Arkansas. You know, I mean, you say same kind of trees, hills. You know, I mean, the community, it's very reminiscent. Arkansas's got several different kinds of geography. You know, you got the Ozark Mountains, you got the Washita Mountains, but you also got the Mississippi Delta, the floodplain. I mean, you know, you can go from flat lands where it's just flat, you know, nothing, farmland, to into the mountains. So there's different geographies there. It's you know, geographically diverse state, but it's fairly rural. I mean, there's only 3 million people in the entire state of Arkansas. You know, so I can drive in 20 minutes in any direction and be someplace I can go hunting.
How close are you to the Ozarks? You know,
where I live is just about the entry of the foothills to the Ozarks.
Okay.
So going north from, I live in Sherwood, which it's Little Rock, North Little Rock, Sherwood. I'm in the metropolitan area of Little Rock.
Okay.
I mean, you know, central Arkansas, 15, 20 minutes from downtown Little Rock. 15 minutes maybe. I mean,
so that's, how far would
close.
that be from Joplin, like Missouri, Branson, not Joplin, Branson?
Branson, you're 3 hours.
3 hours. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I run up there. I do some turkey hunting close to the Arkansas-Missouri border.
Yeah.
Got one of my BJJ black belts is a game warden in his area. I mean, he lives right by the Missouri border. In fact, when we're at his house, it's easier for us to go eat in Branson than it is to go back. I
wonder if he knows my Uncle Rick. My Uncle Rick is a retired game warden who lives in He lives right outside of Springfield, Missouri. I think it's Republic. I'm not sure, but that would be really interesting because
Republic is,
so I lived there for actually the first jiu-jitsu class I ever took was at Team Ludador in Springfield, Missouri. This was in 2000.
Who was the coach?
We're friends on Facebook. I can't remember his dang name. Michael, what the heck is his name? Black dude who fights in the UFC. He came out of that school. He was on The Ultimate Fighter. This was in 2000. What the heck's Michael's last name? 2007, something like that. So interesting, small world because that's a small but pretty known place. Believe it or not.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, well, it's interesting. There's that area of the country's. I love that area and going up and
beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. But so anyway, I got involved in I played team sports until about junior high, and I was a small, skinny white kid that wasn't where I started school a year early because I started in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So I can remember like ninth grade showing, and everybody got big. I mean, it was like so I started getting more into individual sports and. Got interested in boxing and then, ended up wandering into a taekwondo school. And then I went to school in Waco, Texas at Baylor for a while. And I trained at some Shotokan when I was down there. Then came back to Arkansas, finished up my college career at UALR, University of Arkansas, Little Rock. And I was working at the martial arts school and first as a Nautilus instructor and then as a Taekwondo instructor, and then I worked my way through college pretty much, last several years of college. I took a semester off. I kickboxed, had a fight, actually fought on ESPN, my first fight, yeah.
That was the PKA? Is that what?
Yeah, the old PKA days.
Okay.
I was greener than grass, had no idea what the hell I was doing. I mean, I was like, I'm a big kickboxer, I'm going to hit somebody hard. But it opened up some doors, and you haven't lived till you've had your ass whooped good for you on national TV, And I was like, well, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to get better, or I'm going to quit, and I didn't ever quit. So hopefully I got a little bit better. Then so I started getting serious about kickboxing. Got into Muay Thai. I was doing Muay Thai before Muay Thai was cool. Actually, was training with a guy out of Springfield, Missouri. A guy named B.J. Johnson.
Michael Johnson. That's his name.
Michael
you said Johnson.
Yeah.
Michael the Menace Johnson. Yes.
Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah. So anyway, I was going up, and there were some guys in Springfield, Missouri, that were a guy named Tong Tithra. I think had the Midwest Muay Thai Academy there in Springfield, and there was BJ, and there was, there wasn't a lot of people in the 80s doing Muay Thai, and then started hearing about, the shoot fighting. The guy named Bart Vale was doing shoot fighting in Japan. I saw one of his tapes, and those guys were mixing it up. And that kind of then, the Gracie Challenge started happening, started hearing about this Gracie family, and, Lethal Weapon came out. The guy, and Horian had done the choreography for Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
He ended up coming to, I guess, say around, it was either December of 90 or January of 91. I remember it being around New Year's, so I just can't remember which side, right? So if you say the beginning of 91, January 91, he came in and did a seminar in Arkansas. Hoyce was just a kid. It was, they're talking almost 3 years before the first UFC. And so nobody knew. I mean, if you weren't reading, they had some magazine articles and there was a few things, but they were not mainstream by any stretch of the imagination. And, there was a few magazine articles about the Gracie Challenge and this and that. So anyway, they came Conway, Arkansas. They did a seminar. And I went to that seminar and immediately realized, okay, I got to learn this. It was pretty incredible. They definitely had something going on. So, anyway, so it was like Taekwondo and then kickbox. Of course, in there, I trained with Joe Lewis, trained with Bill Wallace, and I'm still training with, Joe passed, but I'm still training with Bill. And then, involved with the kickboxing, and then, and it's kind of like what Bruce Lee said, out fighting, in fighting, trapping, grappling, on the mat. So you have these ranges of styles, and then having systems that help you become proficient, in these different ranges, I think is really important. So it's all things, for me personally, like I'm a concealed handgun instructor. I'm, involved heavily with law enforcement. I do law enforcement defensive tactics. We have, on either side of my gym, I've got Little Rock Air Force Base on one side of me, and it's a C-130 training base. So we have a steady influence of military guys. On the other side of me, there's Camp Robinson, which is a National Guard training base. And so I've constantly got law enforcement and military guys coming in and training with me, and I'm very proud of that. So sticks, knives, and 45s. I've been an avid hunter. I've hunted all. Growing up in Arkansas, if you didn't like to fish and hunt, there was something wrong. So that's what I do. I tell everybody, if I couldn't be a martial artist, I'd be a hunting guide. There's nothing else that I think trips my trigger. Quite like it. And it's amazing how you get in. Like, I'm the co-chair of the Arkansas Athletic Commission. I'm a boxing commissioner, and so we oversee boxing, kickboxing, and MMA.
At all levels? Is that how it goes?
In Arkansas.
Okay.
We oversee, we have the right to regulate both amateur and professional.
Has the UFC come back since they had their, what was that, UFC, was it UFC 1 that was in Arkansas? No, that was in Colorado.
It was in Colorado.
So what was it? So they did
No,
fight.
we've never had a UFC in Arkansas. Memphis. They've been in Memphis a couple of times, but there's never been.
Maybe there was one in there, but guess not. No,
there's never been one. And the problem is that honestly, there's not a venue large enough in Arkansas.
That would make sense.
To really, the stadiums that they want to have when they're on the road, they want to be able to pack the house.
Sure.
Their numbers. They honestly have a complete team. Does a site evaluation. They go in and they've got certain criteria they have to meet. So they're not just doing shows anywhere.
But they still put on a lot of like professional. There's different organizations in Arkansas that put on different fights and stuff like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Most of them are regional shows.
Sure.
We don't have any large shows, but there's several regional shows that'll come in and.
You guys have produced some fighters,
Oh, yeah.
There's several fighters in the UFC. One happens to be pretty controversial as of lately, but so that's pretty cool. There's some talent down in there. So
for sure.
For how small, population is. So that's
it's
cool.
Crazy how many martial arts schools there are. I can step outside my gym and throw a rock in any direction and hit a school, I actually put on one of the first all-amateur MMA shows in the nation.
Really?
So, yeah, we were doing it before it was cool. Like, before anybody knew what was going on, because I got involved with BJJ before, before the UFC. So, BJJ didn't really, the Gracies put together the UFC to kind of showcase their style, right?
Yeah.
And so I had gotten involved, and then, man, I tell you, in the early 90s, it was tough to find training. Like, there weren't a lot of people grappling. And so, you do whatever you could find. I'd do a Sambo seminar, I'd do a catch as catch can seminar. I would do anybody that knew something about the ground, man, I was going to try to find, and as guys were going around and doing the seminars. And of course, after the first UFC, it started picking up, and UFC 4 was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and one of my students and a friend of mine had just gotten out of the SEALs, and he'd been training with Helson Gracie in Hawaii, being on the teams. So he had gotten out of the teams. He ended up going back in because he realized the only way he could train and stay in as good a shape is if he went back into the teams. This guy was a freak. He incredible. Like, he was just built different. He'd run 10 and swim a mile. He'd run 10 miles, swim a mile, and then he'd go do PT with the teams. Like, this guy just was
high level stuff, man.
Yeah, just a phenomenal. He was just built different. But he said, "Hey, man, Helson's going to be doing a seminar in Tulsa. Do you want to go?" I was like, "Yeah, let's go." So he was coming in, we'd roll. So we go in, and Elio, the old man, was there. Oh, wow. So they had all the Gracies, and so I can actually say I was on the mat with Elio Gracie. He came over, and I guess I was jacking some technique up, and he come over and got down and just choking on me, and I'm like, I'm being choked by Skeletor. He was in his 90s then,
wow,
and
that's crazy.
Got down, and so I was like, oh, that is so cool. And I've had been fortunate, of course, trained with Horian and Hoyce at a seminar, and then I've been able to hit several seminars that Hoyce has done over the years. One of them was in Springfield.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then and run into them a couple of different places, and know people that trained with them. And then I don't know, that I got to go do a seminar with, I've trained quite a bit with Henzo over the years.
Really?
Yeah. I taught at a camp called the Karate College in Virginia, and for probably a dozen years, and Henzo was a real regular at that camp. And so, and now he did seminars, Memphis and in Arkansas, and I don't know if he did I think maybe in Paragould.
Is his headquarters in New York, New Jersey, somewhere up there?
I think it's in New York.
It's in New York, okay.
Yeah, I've never been there.
Okay.
But just caught him at seminars and camps.
He's a pretty funny dude.
Love him.
Yeah,
incredible guy, and just such a warm individual.
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, and the real deal. Obviously a fighter.
Oh, yeah.
Then I went and did a private lesson, got to go train with Hickson.
I saw that.
Yeah, which is really,
How was that?
It was awesome.
Really?
Here, everybody in the family, when all the bad boys go, that's the bad boy. When you're talking to a bunch of tough guys, and all the tough guys go, that's the tough guy right there. And so it was really a cool experience. In fact, I'm planning to go back and see him in May. I'm going to go do another.
Where's his school at?
He just moved to Florida. He was out in I think Redondo area.
Okay.
In
California.
Yeah, and now he's living in Florida. So
smart man.
Yeah, moved out. Yeah, for sure. I don't. The cost of living and stuff. It's amazing to me. I don't know how they do it out there.
Yeah, that's where I'm from. So
really,
yeah, born and bred in California, man.
What part?
Ridgecrest, north of LA, probably 2.5 hours, something like that. High Sierra Mountains, desert, high country.
It's so unfortunate because it's so beautiful out there.
Isn't it? Wild.
In the beginning, I would go out and train. I trained with Go-Kart Chavician. I'd go out and travel and train with Go-Kart. I trained with Gene LaBelle. I trained Joe Morera, and Alan Goes. Through Alan, I met Joe Morera. Alan is how I actually ended up meeting Tony Emanuel. Tony was a Novignon guy. Trained, got his brown belt with Andre Pederneiras, and then moved to the States, and he was training with John Lewis, and or teaching, not training, he was teaching with John Lewis in Vegas, and then met Alan, and Alan hired him, and he was working out in Cali, working for Alan, and then Alan, I actually got my blue belt through the Carlson Gracie Association through Alan Goes. But he sent Tony to Arkansas to promote us and kind of run a little testing for us and promote us up. So I can honestly say I've gotten every rank, from blue belt through 5th degree black belt from my coach.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then this day and age, it's kind of a rarity, for somebody to stick with one team and one association. That's things have changed, but so I was going out and loved Alan. There was no Alan treated us great. He ended up going back to Brazil, and you can't train with somebody you can't find, and Tony in the meantime had he moved to Arkansas, and then I trained him for MMA. And he was training us in BJJ, and he went from Arkansas. He went back out to California, and then he came. Then he went back to Brazil for a little bit. Then he came back to Arkansas and stayed with me for quite a while. And then I actually went down to Rio and received my black belt at Andre Pederneiras' school in Rio in 2001.
Wow!
So it's funny. I when we were out in L.A., I trained with a guy named Chris Howder. Well, Chris was one of the Dirty Dozen. He was one of the 12 original American black belts. And two things kind of freaked me out about that was one is that he got his black belt 4 years before I did. So I wasn't in that first group. I was pretty close.
Pretty damn close.
And then the other thing was I was 4 years older than him. I was like, oh, God, right through the heart. Dang, I guess I am getting old. It's funny because you start talking. To me, in my mind, I can remember the early days of the UFC and UFC 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I mean? I was on the mat rolled with Pat Militek and Maurice Smith, and the community in the beginning was really small. There was not a lot of guys because I was promoting some fights and I was taking promoting fights and I know fighters, and then guys, there was a guy named Brett Moses in Atlanta that had the Fight Party Productions. And so, he was putting on a lot of shows, and I was carrying fighters down there. And then there would be Forrest Griffin, or there would be, this guy and that. The community was pretty tight. And you would run into these, you're running into fighters and, we're going down to Florida to fight. We're going here, we're going there. And it was you ran into a lot of people, and now, hell, I can't keep up with the garage gyms in Central Arkansas. They're everywhere. But for a while, man, I probably knew everybody in about a 4 or 5 state area that was capable of producing somebody that was willing to, in the early days, it was pretty raw, and not everybody was, my style versus your style. And then it kind of, people started realizing real quick, I got to learn something about that damn ground, and then, it just, you kind of can see it. It's interesting how it was all about the submissions, and then, it became about the wrestling, and then, hey, you still got to know Muay Thai, you still got to be able to box, you still got to be able to strike. And it's interesting, and people will talk, and I go, well, when you see a D1 All-American wrestler and a BJJ world champion fight and it doesn't go to the ground, people are wanting to see people stand and bang. There's knockouts still sell.
Absolutely.
It just is what it is, right? Yeah. So you're not going to get there if you don't know the ground. You're not going to rise to that level, but at the highest levels, people still want to see folks stand and bang.
Right, like Stephen Bonner, Forrest Griffin. That's kind of what set the UFC on its trajectory.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, that fight alone was
a war.
and just behind the scenes of like basically, Dana calling Lorenzo and basically asking for another $1 million, and they're like, we don't know if we want to do this, you know, and like literally right before that happens, and now it's just poof.
Oh yeah,
off into the sunset it went.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
I mean,
wild.
It is. I mean, the sport without a couple of fights like that, right? Mm-hmm. And having the tough house.
Yeah.
I mean, and the guys just getting out there, and then it became mainstream. I mean, they really tried to shut it down. It was like, human cockfighting and being on the athletic commission. So I was a commissioner from 2000 to 2008, and then change of governors. I was a Huckabee appointee, Mike Huckabee.
Oh, wow.
Was the governor in Arkansas at that time.
He was a good governor, wasn't he?
Yeah. And then new governor came in, and I was out for about 8 years. And then I got back in, and I've been back in for, I guess, 9, maybe.
How does that work?
You're a governor appointee, so you serve at the discretion of the governor, right?
Gotcha.
And
okay.
It's free work. It's like a time vampire, you know what I mean? But there's no aspect of a fight that I haven't done. So I've been the fighter. I've been the corner. I've been the center ref. I've been a judge. I've been a timekeeper. I've been the announcer. I've been the play-by-play guy. I've been the guy in the ring with the mic. I've done matchmaking. I've put the ring up. I've torn the ring down. I've worked the concession stand. I've sold tickets. Like, when I say there's no aspect of promoting or being involved in a fight, I've done it all. And so really it makes sense. If you're going to have somebody in nobody's happy that you're an athletic commissioner. Like, you're the cop of the fighters. You're the cop of the promoters. You have to be the adult in the room. There's just time. Fighters want to fight, and maybe to their detriment. Promoters want to make money, maybe to the detriment of the fighters. I mean, you pretty much have to, step up and call sometimes BS, and hey, I might be affecting the way this guy's trying to earn his living, be it putting on a show or fighting in a show, and there's times that you just kind of like, you have to make hard calls, and you're not always going to be popular.
No.
I mean, there's just times all you can do is ethically go, hey, these are the the lines in the sand that I'm going to draw, and this is it. And you've got to be fair. You got to listen to people. I mean, there's times that, okay, you plead your case. Maybe I don't think it's good to always have your mind 100% made up, but
true.
You still have to have some anchor points or some touchstones that you go, okay, these are the things that I believe. Now, if you can sway my opinion around these anchor points, great. But there's just times, I mean, it's tough.
When did you start on the athletic commission stuff? You've been doing it for how many years have you been doing it?
Total. I've been back on since 2016, so another 9 years, and then 8 years before that, so 17 years altogether.
So were you around when they were trying to come up with like how they were going to basically set up and scoring points and how they were going to set up mixed martial arts in general? Because back then, I mean, I'm going based off of
it used to be
the
no rules,
the one glove guy, and a guy in a gi, and so how'd that look?
So it's interesting when I got interviewed, I got put on this show, and I had a guy contact me. His name was Eddie Goldman, and he had the Valley Tudo newsletter, and it was a rag, like, it was pre, internet popularity like it is now. I mean, people still had rags, and it looked like the old National Enquirer type, magazine, news magazine. The Valley Tudo was no holds barred, right?
Right.
So he reaches out to me and does an interview. I mean, I'm like, how did this guy from New York hear about my? But I'd pulled. I think I'd had a couple of guys come in from like Chattanooga or come in from Tennessee or someplace, and guys from Memphis, and like I said, the community's small. So anyway, I had Eddie Goldman interviewed me about why are you doing all amateur? The early, like Tito Ortiz, first time he fought in the UFC, he fought as an amateur. So a lot of the
that's right. Yep, you're right.
A lot of the original UFCs were pro-am shows as they started developing. And so to have an all-amateur show, and I'm like, well, you're not going to develop the sport unless you have a way for amateurs, because a guy that's,
Sure.
hey, I'm going to fight as a pro, and you've never fought. Like, you look at a boxer. I had a USA Amateur Boxing Club inside my gym. And so you're going to Smokers, and guys are getting fights like this almost. In some areas, they can get a fight damn near every weekend. And then you go to a boxing tournament, you might get 3 or 4 fights in a weekend, right? And by the time guys turn pro, the good guys, man, they've had 90, 100, 200 fights. So by the time they turn pro in boxing, you're considered a novice until you've had 10 fights. Most guys don't even begin fighting open class until they've had at least 10 fights, right? Guys were turning pro in MMA that had 2, 3, 4 fights. They weren't pros. They might have been getting paid a few $100,
right?
But just in by definition, okay, most athletic commissions, you got paid to fight, you're now a pro. If you in Arkansas, if you made like over $100 or $50, back then it was $50. If you got over $50 in compensation, you were considered a pro. Brother, that didn't make you a pro. Hell, that won't even buy you a tank of gas to get to the show. You know what I'm saying? So having a way for guys to get in and truly getting a good amateur, and that's one of the problems right now, is that there's not a good amateur development on the national scene. Guys, amateurs try to get fights. Promoters will throw them on. Everybody runs pro-am cards. And they're trying to. They'll have to have by law X number of rounds of professional fights. And to make up, they'll go, okay, well, I'm going to have 6 or 7 or 8 AMI fights, and I'll run 4 pro fights, so they can have the number of rounds of fights that they have to meet an athletic commission standard.
And that's per organization putting on the fight as what they kind of recommend, or is this now becoming kind of a national?
Well, it depends on the athletic commission in the state.
In the state, okay.
Yeah, so different states can have different rules.
Because you kind of see even in and I kind of follow the amateur world too, but you see, you can tell when there's an experienced coach around, because they're going to keep them amateur as long as they possibly can.
For sure. And you'll have guys that'll, hey, you're boxing this weekend, and then you're going to go,
Jiu-jitsu
you're going to
tournament,
IKF, and then you're hitting this tournament. Yeah, you're going to be doing NAGAs, you're doing AGF, you're doing IBJJF, you're doing this, you're doing some fight to wins, or you're doing, guys are now, there's just so many more opportunities to compete.
Sure.
Hell, the first grappling tournament I ever saw, I put on. There weren't, when I was coming up in the ranks, there were no grappling tournaments. There was nobody, doing that stuff. It took a while. People started, and now, you could go to a tournament every weekend. Yeah, if you're willing to drive 4, 5, 6 hours, I promise you draw a 6-hour circle around this town right now, you're going to find a competition.
Yeah.
Somebody's doing pre-matched fights, or they're doing a tournament, and you can go get some, And so you want to do all of that you can, when guys say, I want to fight pro, it's like, oh. And here's the deal, too. It's like you look at a kid that comes in a wrestling program. So let's look at the success of wrestlers. You can start wrestling when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, and then depending on the leagues, and then you get into junior high and high school. Now you've got coaches that actually have a degree from somewhere in coaching.
Right.
It's not just, hey, I like jiu-jitsu, I'm putting a sign up, I'm a coach. If you think about it, there's not a lot of regulation on anybody can open up I can put a shingle up, and Joe's Killam Karate. I can run a karate school, or a taekwondo school, or a BJJ school.
Yeah.
And you might get discovered and called out, but hey, get some guys that are passionate. Oh man, I love jiu-jitsu. I'm gonna start running some classes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're trained out of coach.
That's right.
There's a difference.
Big
and
difference.
So you think about it. You get a kid that now he's won state in high school. or had a good, solid wrestling career, he gets a scholarship to a D1 university. Now what happens? Well, he's on scholarship, so he's required. When they say, coach says, you're going to be at the track at 5 a.m. and you're running. And then they have some kids that are postgraduate assistants that are in diet or dietitians. And, okay, well, we know he's got to have so many calories. So now he's eating good meals, right? I mean, he's because they're watching their weight. Now I've got to go to my strength coach. And you got some guy that's his degree is in phys ed, so, he's building a program. And now, you look at football players in a university. You look at, collegiate wrestlers, basketball. Man, those guys they're semi-professional athletes. I mean, they're getting paid to go to school. They're getting paid to perform. And so now, you get a guy coming out of a D1 athletic program where everybody around him is like studying either, physiology, kinesiology, psychology, coaching. There's a whole, host of things that goes into that.
Yeah.
Now, take a guy that's a wrestler like that's coming out of that kind of a program, and then you got some guy that, hey, I do jiu-jitsu 3 times a week. I'm going to be a pro. And I'm like,
hold your horses.
Let's see.
Well, that's why everybody talks about, like, they don't quite understand why Dagestani wrestlers are so good transforming over into MMA. And it's like, well, these guys are training.
From the time they're coming out of the womb.
It's like a mandatory thing for their family. And then on top of that, you have a religion. Most of them are Muslim in that part of the region. Then you have a discipline in wrestling and outside of wrestling.
Yeah.
You're going to get up at 5 a.m. You're going to eat this. You're going to pray.
You're going to run.
And their mindset is just completely
and it's
programmed.
For family.
Oh,
yeah.
There's honor. It's so hard.
It's tough. It's tough.
Hard to mimic that.
And so, those guys are competing to see who gets to eat. Like, it was
insane.
Families were the brothers. Well, it was like the Gracies, hey, man, they would fight to see who got to eat dinner first, And I've heard stories from some of these guys about crazy stuff that they did. And when you're training at that level, if you're like casually, and that's why there's levels to the game. And I'm all about, that's why having the opportunity for amateur leagues, you look at our boxing with USA Boxing. And guys are getting the opportunity to compete over and over and over and over, and then going in and then looking at these different programs. You have but I don't think we have that quite for our amateurs in MMA. They're coming out of, the best guys are coming out of the wrestling programs, because I think they get some of the best athletic training. Coming out of that. I think that
look at Bo Nickel.
Yeah. And
that's
that's
insane. The Penn State, there's
a different culture. These guys are coming out of an entirely different culture, and that's tough for somebody that's a casual, if you don't have, and even with like Ronda Rousey coming out of the Olympic Training Center,
right.
You see the guys coming out of the Olympic Judo, and that level of training and competition, on the international scene, then, hey, give me a tier 1 athlete and let me work with them on some focus mitts, and let me do that. Man, you can make that person pretty dangerous. They may not be the most polished strikers, but brother, they're awesome athletes, and they're going to hit you enthusiastically.
Right.
They may not have the most polished boxing,
right,
but they hit hard. And so, and people are getting better at blending. Now there's the money there, and there's the science and the strategy and how to blend and truly how to mix these martial arts, and the level of athleticism that we're seeing coming out. The science, and it's just like, we were talking earlier before the podcast about like peptides and stem cells. And
Yeah.
I mean, that science of human performance and longevity is, I mean, I've seen it just explode in the last 10 years, much less my lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think about when I was a kid and, you know, working out and the supplements that we had, you know, 40 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, I'm lucky I didn't rip my guts out. You know
but
what I
you
mean?
probably had some legitimate steak back then. Too.
Yeah, well, that's true.
You didn't have all the hormones and, you know, all the shit, seed oils and shit inside the food.
You know, I've taken, honestly, we were talking, you know, eating venison. I blend, I usually buy a cow now, you know, I mean,
Smart.
we'll split get a couple of guys together and we'll split a steer. And then a lot of times, man, I'm mixing, you know, my ground deer with my ground beef. And I do, you know, I mean.
You use pork fat or beef fat?
Typically beef fat.
Okay.
Yeah, typically beef fat. It depends, like on the sausages. Like if I have breakfast sausage made up, it'll be pork fat.
Okay.
Usually it's like, I like it fairly lean. So,
Yeah.
you know, but for cooking, and so it'll hold together a little bit of beef fat.
Right.
And even like stews and stuff, you know, I mean, between me and my kids, we shoot several deer. So, you know, I mean, I'm cubing up strap and so my deer stews.
Do you cut everything
good.
up yourself?
No.
You have processors.
Yeah. We've got,
nice.
There's a place not far from my gym that does, shout out to the Buck Stops here. You know, I love it. And they make some awesome summer sausage. You know, they do a jalapeno grind summer sausage for me that rocks. And then, they just do a good job. And they know me, you know. I mean, I've had the owner call me up, haven't seen you. Where are you? You know, Tracy at the Buck Stop. She'll been wondering, have you been out hunting? Why come I hadn't? So if I have a lean year, but we usually, I send them a lot of business. But I fill my freezer, I feed my friends.
Yeah.
And
so you grew up eating deer meat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Deer and duck and turkey. And I mean, I think a lot of fish, a lot of crappie, a lot of catfish.
Crappie, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so it's just what you do in Arkansas.
Right.
And but it's healthy too, you know, I mean, and I find, golly, it's at this stage, eating clean. You know, I'm taking a group of guys to Brazil this summer, go do jiu-jitsu. And we just had this conversation at lunch today. I eat well. Like we go to the all-you-can-eat meat places, and I mean, we pick nice restaurants, and I like simple food, like, you know, meat, rice, beans, you know, pico type stuff, and, you know, maybe they some potato. I just simple, but and dude, I lose weight when I'm down there, and I eat like a king, and I think it has to do with the preservatives and the additives and the steroids.
Well,
and
a lot of that's illegal there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a list, and I could be wrong exactly on the number, but it's like 100 different ingredients that are literally banned in most countries in the world. Mm-hmm. And we acknowledge them. I mean, they're in all our foods.
Yeah.
You know, and people wonder after the 1970s why guys, you know, didn't, you know, blew up. I mean, to see a 230-pound man, I mean, I wasn't born in the 70s, but I hear people talk about this all the time.
So
you didn't see it.
Do you remember that? Well, the first 300-pound NFL player was a guy by the name of Refrigerator Perry, right? Played Chicago. And now you got kids in high school that weigh 300 pounds. You know, I mean, if you're not over 300 pounds, you're not playing on the line. No. And I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you know, the size, and it wasn't like that when I was a kid. I promise you. You know what I mean? No. Well, and put it like this: you didn't have the first strength and conditioning coach in the NFL until the mid '70s.
Really? Who was he with?
I don't know. I know, but it was in the early to mid '70s that you first started having strength coaches.
So that's where the bigger,
in the
faster.
NFL.
I wonder if that's the bigger, faster, stronger program where that kind of came
That's kind of starting. It was
the squat, the deadlift, the bench.
Yeah.
You know,
But
all the
you know, I mean,
calisthenic stuff.
it's funny because I hear there was a time, even in the NFL, when it was like, you want to get better at football, you play football. And, you know, there was off season and the guys would come back and there was I remember reading this thing and I forget, it was a fairly famous football player and he came back and wasn't in good enough shape to run a mile. And his coach said, well, when we're, you know, fourth in a mile, I won't run them. So, you know, but now if you're not training year round, you're not playing. I mean,
No.
There's, you know, you get a couple of weeks off after the season, maybe to heal a few injuries, and then your ass better be in the weight room. You better be doing your running. I mean, it's so competitive, and your body detrains athletically so rapidly that if you're not grinding, you ain't playing because there's so many hungry kids coming out of college. I mean, you know, there's only so many roster spots, right? And somebody's going to want it, and they're going to outwork you. Yeah. So that hustle culture, but you know, it's funny. Even in BJJ, you know, I hear the guys, well, if you want to get better at BJJ, you're going to do BJJ, and there's a lot to that, no doubt. You should never sacrifice skill training, but. Can you imagine saying that in the NFL? If you want to be better at football, just do football.
Well,
you know?
Yeah, no.
And I mean, so you get two guys, I mean, assuming that you're able, you know, and that's why you're seeing these guys that are looking like Adonises. I mean, look at Gordon Ryan and some of these guys. I mean, you know, they're...
Which I'm not against. I mean, I'm not a guy that's like, you know, like either make a league where it's no steroids, no TRT, no peptides, or make it whatever you want to do. Yeah. You know, and it's like, because again, we're looking to see who the best of the best is, regardless of what happens. I mean, that's just what I think. You know,
well, define. I mean, you've got to define what best
is
the because
UFC
there's nothing natural. There's nothing natural about training 12 hours a day.
No,
you know, or hey, you know, listen,
But I like as a viewer, I think it's you know, I want the most exciting thing, the biggest guy, the you know, gnarliest knockout, you know, type of thing. You know, as a fan, you know, so because there's a lot of
there's
like
limits. I mean, you know, you don't want to see people having their heart blow up.
No,
you know, I mean,
of course not.
Because
you should be seeing a doctor. It should be prescribed. You should be doing it the right way.
There's definitely scenarios come up that could be pretty horrific.
Absolutely,
you know, because left to their own devices, like I said, it's like being the cop of the fighters and being the cop. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that there would hit points, and so you know, doing I do think that. You know, testing protocols.
Absolutely.
Then there's like, okay, well, we're going to allow you to do, there's things that are legal, you know, peptides. And you're not going to get in trouble for doing peptides. You're not going to get in trouble for taking amino acids. You're not going to get in trouble for doing creatine, glutamine, you know.
Which are all great things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And,
but you want to go in there on, you know, D-ball or something crazy. I mean, it's like,
rage.
No, you don't want to do that.
You know, you're going to see somebody, you know, I knocked the guy out and then I monkey stomped his head 50 times, you know, and like we carried him to jail.
Yeah.
So, you can take it to an extreme. And I think but definitely, you know, guys are getting better at their conditioning and learning that, hey, you know, I mean, I can't compete. You know, if I'm doing jiu-jitsu 6 hours a day and this guy's doing jiu-jitsu 6 hours a day and he's also doing 4 hours a day of strength and conditioning work, my money's on the guy that's getting 10 hours a day in. You know, I mean, and that extra strength and conditioning work, if he's doing the same volume and, you know, you're seeing a difference, you know, I mean, and it's finding that balance, you know, because you tear up tendons. I mean, the purpose is to get really, really good at jiu-jitsu. But, man, you're looking at these guys and you're like, you know, shit, he looks like he could also be posing in a bodybuilding competition. I mean, the guys are...
Some of them are... That's not natural whatsoever, you know. But I mean, again, it goes back to recovery and things like that.
But when you can train harder, longer than the next guy,
you're going to be better.
Right? Yeah, for sure. So interesting. It brings up some interesting topics, you know, that have yet to be 100% decided. And I think as you get more money involved into the sports, like CJI, you start getting some of these different leagues coming up, and you top athletes are going to go where the money is.
Sure.
And then the ones that have the money chose are going to get to pretty much decide, hey, either are we testing or, we're bringing in USADA or WADA or, are we bringing in the anti-doping agencies or are we going to let y'all play?
Right.
But what will happen is that if they don't somewhat manage it, what will happen is that somebody's going to die.
Yeah, it's gonna
on
get out of
TV.
control. Yeah.
Somebody's heart's going to blow up. There's going to be, you're going to have something tragic happen, and then there'll be public outcry, and then an agency like an athletic commission is going to step in and go, okay, hey, everybody's got to be tested. I kind of say one person shits the bed and everybody has to wear a diaper.
Yeah.
And so that's what could potentially, whether people, I don't know if they want to think about it in those terms, but that's ultimately what ends up kind of happening is that, it'll be the Wild West for a little bit. And people look back at this time, remember when there was that guy named Gordon Ryan and remember these guys and everybody was doing it until nobody can do it. So.
But that's like TRT. Like you can't be on TRT obviously because of the certain, you can control your levels on it, but essentially it's, people that don't really understand the science behind it. It's a hormone. It's not a steroid. It's a hormone. You and I both produce it. Women produce it. So it's like you get guys that are of age and want to get on it because maybe their testosterone's extremely low and they don't have they don't have energy. They can't think. They can't train. They can't recover. And and like IBJJF, I don't think you can be. I think there's a no tolerance for anything in the IBJJF. I don't know exactly if that's true or not.
I don't know how much they're actually testing.
Yeah, because Jeremy Clobberdance that used to train with Steve, I think it was him that got pulled to the side and got tested. And it was just like a random thing, and I'm thinking, oh, that's weird. I could be wrong on who it was. I thought it was him, but I thought that was like kind of interesting because like clearly you see some of these other guys, that win like no-gi worlds and stuff like that, and you're like, ooh, that's a big guy, and he looks almost too perfect, know, and it's like, it's I don't know. It's
pretty tough. I don't know exactly what I think they're trying to figure protocol. It out. And there's
a lot of learning behind what's happening.
There is because you've got the number that testing isn't cheap, right?
No.
And, there's still, you've got guys that are trying to fight professional that are paying to fight. Like, what other professional athlete has to pay to get to play? It's a little bit different, kind of diminishes it a little bit. And then when you're having to pay to do the testing, do you do randomized? Do you make people start submitting? And then what's range? Like, are you looking between 400 and 900? But somebody's testosterone comes back and they're like 1,400.
Nope, you're done.
Yeah, it's like, whoa. But, and then how do you... there's just a lot of interesting what metabolites they're looking for when they're doing the testings and stuff. So what markers, I don't, I'm not deep enough in the weeds with some of the science of that, but I do know it to me, in my mind, raises more of the questions like we're talking about here than I have good answers.
Yeah.
And,
well, you see guys like, example, TJ Dillashaw gets popped. Conor McGregor decides he's not going to fight anymore. Well, I don't think he'll come back, but he breaks a leg, gets out. He hasn't fought since.
Blows up like a balloon.
And it's, you look at it like a recovery reason. I'm trying to think of who is like quote unquote retired, went and got surgeries, blew up, and then gets back into the testing pool again. And I think Cerrone is actually in the testing pool, but he got out. And he's on Transcend promoting TRT, and I'm thinking, okay, well, you got 6 months to get it out of your system, and now you can get back into the testing pool again, And I think, obviously, for these guys coming out, these guys got 40-plus banging fights in the UFC. They're beat to crap. It's like, so I think on that side is like the recovery. A lot of these guys are doing it for recovery reasons,
Sure. But the things that don't recover is... CTE, the amount of trauma.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And I remember, do you know Josh Tufty?
No.
A boxer from in this area, and tough guy. Great dude. I think he had worked as a sparring partner for the Klitschko's, and professional boxer and kickboxing. Been at some of the Joe Louis camps, and come around. Think the world of Josh. Known him for a long time. Was talking about seeing a brain scan. Had fought in like New York, someplace, and he goes, "Oh man, looking at what are all those lights?" And the doctor was like, "Well, that's brain damage." He's like, "Oh," he goes, "Man, it kind of looked like New York City at night, you can see all these little light dots and, yeah." And he goes, "Oh, man, you can still do simple math. But we know, but what we don't know is when that becomes a problem. Like, when do you get that one punch too many? Like, you got guys that finish their career and they're commentators on television. And then there's guys that finish their career and they can't form complete sentences."
Yeah.
I got to meet Mickey Ward in an ABC meeting,
wow.
and he was donating his brain and his spine to science. And he was a couple of years younger than me at the time, and couldn't work out, couldn't train. Had just those wars with Arturo Gatti, and
wow.
The amount of banging that he did. He was done. Couldn't work out, and was suffering from some neurological issues. Some of the early Gary Goodrich, I believe, I met him at an ABC meeting, and he had some issues. There were some of these guys that, the early ones. MMA's only been around long enough now that we're starting to see, what those effects.
Yeah.
And we weren't designed to get beat in the brain.
No.
And it's a brutal sport. And what happens is that every year after 30, those licks take more out of you.
Sure.
There's a lot of really good CTE stuff that comes out of the NFL, because there's been all kinds of cases where football players that have committed suicide or have had, from getting in there and the damage that they take, playing that sport. So, we're studying, but, there's a point where when's that one punch too many?
Yeah.
And so, especially when you start seeing guys over the age of 40 fighting.
Right.
And you talk about that point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of a lot of the bare knuckle boxing.
That's a dangerous one.
And the argument will be, well, hey, it's hand and facial lacerations,
Right.
But the guys, the big money, the guys that are fighting in bare knuckle fighting or has-beens or never was's. It's not a place that bare knuckle fighting isn't where people go on the way up,
Right.
Because there was a time when the two top highest paid athletes in the world was Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather.
Right.
Highest paid athletes in the world. So, are you going, and again, follow the money. Like who's making the most money in boxing or versus bare knuckle boxing, where you're going to make a lot more. And then, and when you see guys that are, okay, I can't make it in the UFC, now I'm going to go bare knuckle box. Like it seems like, and then the facial contusions and stuff. Well, like, okay, after you bare knuckle box, how is having your face laced up and helping you get that next job? That's is that really
right?
People have a right to do what they want to do, and it gets tough to walk away. It gets tough to walk away from the crowds and the adulation and the autograph signing and there's the adrenaline. Adrenaline's a hell of a drug. People get addicted to that. That walk to the cage, that walk to the ring. It's tough to walk away from that. But the problem is that it takes, it definitely takes a toll, and man, sometimes tragically so. And then who's left to pick up the pieces?
Right.
People, well, they've got a right. And I'm like, well, at that point where the city or state or, welfare has to step in because they can't take care of themselves, then it does affect everybody. Like, the arguments, well, I mean, it's their body. They can do what they want. Well, yes and no. I mean, if they become a liability upon society, then at some point you would think society has to be able to put parameters on what they can and can't do.
Yeah. I mean, the CTE stuff now is like they're getting pretty far into it now, like with the science and stuff. I heard that they were looking at brain scans from people riding jet skis. Mm-hmm. Just the impact from each wave that they hit is jerking the brain like sloshing it.
Oh yeah,
and they're saying that even just jet skiing is causing brain trauma. So hopefully, the athletic commissions and things, I'm sure they're taking that into consideration now, because you say, okay, if you've been knocked out, you're done for X amount of days, right?
Right.
And then you have to go get checked by the doctor, go through these scans, and then they say, cool, 6 months, you're good to go, or however. Isn't that that's basically how it works?
60 days, right? I mean, you're gonna have to sit out for so long, and then you have to get doctor's clearance, and then after 40, we have a panel of tests that we want people to start doing, and different athletic commissions have different. I mean, Nevada, New York, New Jersey have some of the most restrictive. California, where they're making people, whole panels of tests and stuff.
Yeah, which I'm not really opposed to that, but
some
stuff you kind of got to let live a little bit, because these are fighters. So
yeah, I think that especially age related, because
for sure,
the difference in the potential damage, because the neuroplasticity of the brain, just your ability to learn, the brain's ability to recover from those impacts. Yeah. What you can recover from in your teens and 20s, and what you're going to recover from in your late 30s, early 40s, and what you're going to recover from in your 50s and 60s. We just hit a point of diminishing returns. It's not that you can't get hit, but your ability to adapt and recover. That's why people are athletes when they're young. You can be an athlete till the day you die, but you're only a competitive athlete. Like, the NFL, a guy told me, man, it stands for not for long. The average career of an NFL player is 3 years. It's a meat grinder. And so for every legacy player, every Tom Brady that you have, or, there's 100 guys, 1,000 guys that, only spent a year, 2 years in the league. Their bodies just can't take it. It chews them up. Right. So, those are just facts of life when it comes to the fighting game. Yeah. It's just stuff that you have to deal with.
And you wrote a book, didn't you?
I did.
What?
I did.
Let's see. I was trying to see what the name is. Stay in the Fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Martial Athlete's Guide to Preventing and Overcoming Injury.
Yeah. I was looking online last night. I was like, I'm going to buy it. Just read it. I go to Amazon, it goes sold out, and I was like, "Damn, I'm gonna have to."
I'll get your address. I'll send you a copy. I've got a copy of it. I'll send you.
So what's it about?
Basically, my journey. I can go. Yeah, I'm an 8th degree, 9th degree, 9th degree. And like any professional athlete, I fought in Russia, I fought in Athens, Greece, I fought in Brazil. I've got 6 international golds, 2 silvers, a bronze. I've got. Shit. I won a bunch of titles, doing what I do. And along the way, I've had 2 knee surgeries, 4 hip surgeries, 2 ruptured discs in my lower back, shoulder surgery, and elbow surgery. So, it's you spend enough time in the gym, you're going to get injured. Sure. Sure. I've been rode hard and put up wet a time or two, and so, and I tell people, man, I didn't always keep my hands up good as a kid. So, but as you come back, I wasn't one to go, okay, I can't do this anymore. Pardon me. When I ruptured discs in my back, they're like, oh, you're done, you can't kick. And I'm like, hold on. And then, having my hip surgery, you're not going to be able to, I'm back in a full center split. And I can still bang thigh pads. And, so basically just kind of a blueprint about going, okay, what do you deal? Like, because there's, man, when you're training all the time, the endorphin rush, again, before we got going, you were saying, hey, man, I go to my workout and then, man, I can fade heat the rest of the day. Right. Things happen, and my approach to life is different.
Yeah.
Well, part of that is too because of the chemicals that we release when we train. It's I think it's more than just that. I don't want to dumb it down to just that.
Yeah.
I think there's a whole host of confidence and psychological and centering. I mean, there's a whole host of things that go along with that. But there's absolutely no doubt, though, that we become addicted to some of the endorphins. I mean, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, the beta-catecholamine system. There's just this whole litany of chemicals that get released when we're deep into what we do.
Yeah.
And when you take that away from somebody, they go through withdrawal. You know, for me, when coming out of a surgery, and like I would train, I trained for my surgeries. Like, I'm going to go, man, the better in shape I can be going into this, the better I'm going to come out of it. Yeah. You know, I mean, and so, but then when you're sitting around, I mean, the discipline of not working out, when you're used to, like, racehorses want to run, when you're used to getting after it and, being physical and being the man, then you're like, oh, hey, I'm on crutches. I can't walk. I can't work out. And then there's a whole host of, issues that go along with that mentally. And so being able to catch yourself, depression, it's kind of natural. You're not getting those workout endorphins. You're going to go through depression.
Absolutely.
And you got to be able to kind of catch yourself and realize, and then being able to redefine what your goals are, and then are you giving yourself nutritional support? Doctors tend to push pills and fix, but they're not necessarily in the business of health. No. And I think there's a holistic kind of thing that goes along with, when you're eating clean and you're, putting the best nutrients into your body, and you're, you've got to, when you're training your mind, and it's that mind, body, spirit, that's kind of that holistic kind of thing is so important.
Which is the way it needs to be done.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Like, there's no other, it's like, your general practitioner is all about reactive rather than proactive,
right.
And so, of course, and then you obviously follow the money, you go and they're wanting to throw blood pressure medication at you, and now you're on cholesterol medication, and now you're on, and I'm not saying that's, some people need that stuff, but there's a whole nother world out there of what kind of foods have you been eating a bag of Takis at 12 o'clock at midnight every night?
Yeah.
That's not even
these
food.
Cheetos that are chemicals that aren't really
caloric. It's just caloric intake essentially. And then obviously, like, RFK is now coming out and starting to expose like the kind of stuff that's in our food that most people really didn't know about. I'd be surprised if he lives for another year, but because these companies are just,
and so
really
how are you
us.
Supposed to heal up? I tell everybody, look, if you were going to transplant a shrub, right? You go and you get your wife a rose bush, and you buy it from the store and you put it in the ground. You're going to water it and fertilize it, right?
Right.
Because you want to give it everything it can to live.
Right.
Right. But we'll have a surgery and not do that with our own nutrition.
Right.
Like, so how are you supposed to model calcium if you're not eating calcium dense foods? And for your body to uptake calcium, it's got to have magnesium and D3 and a whole, so are you getting your trace minerals? Are you getting the things that you need so that your body can repair itself? And so, we're pretty good at our macros, we're going to get our protein and our carbs and our fats, but are we getting our trace minerals? Are we getting our micros? Are we getting the things that we need that's going to give our body the best opportunity to be able to heal? And so as a big part of training, because I ask, like, I do a lot of work with law enforcement, and I'll do a lot of work with, and I'll ask guys, how many of y'all were in a fight for your life last night, last week, last month, last year? And you go back in time, and somebody, and again, it depends on, where they're working, right? This, not all neighborhoods are created equal.
Sure.
Not all jobs in law enforcement or even the military are created equal. And you'll get, but at this camp that I've been at, we just did 2 days of a kickboxing camp, and guys from around the country, we had guys there from California, that high-level martial artists and been around for a long time. We fighters. Bill Superfoot Wallace, an icon of the martial art. I mean, we had a lot of guys there. And so I asked that question in a room full of, 50, 60 martial artists. How many of y'all were? And I went back, and finally there were 2 guys that raised their hand, and one was a cop and the other one was a bouncer. It's like, how many of y'all been in a fight? So yeah, and the bouncer was military guy, and we're not visiting violence, day in, day out. We're playing martial sports, sure. Because fortunately, we're not fighting for our lives day in and day out. Of course, that specter's always there, and you always want to be able to defend yourself. We live in violent times, and with a lot of population, that means you got a lot of really, really good people, but also means there's some really not so good people.
Absolutely.
It is what it is, right? So, but you kind of find out when you're training, you're a lot more likely to die of a health or stress-related disease than you are the boogeyman jumping out and getting you.
Right.
So training for health, and I tell people I'm still doing martial arts today after all these years for all the reasons why I got into it. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to defend myself.
That's right.
And so, but when I say defend myself, it's like I want to be able to defend myself against, cancer or, heart disease or stress. Stress-related disease kill people. They cause a whole host of other things. Sure. So when I'm working out, I'm burning stress. I'm
right.
able to fade heat. Things roll off. I find that when if I'm ill or if I'm injured and I'm not training, man, I'm a little more on edge. I don't necessarily respond to those day in, day out stresses. Yeah. Just like you said, hey man, if I got a letter from the IRS after I train, I'm gonna deal with it. It's just not gonna bother me the same.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you burning that stress. You store stress chemically in our body like water in a sponge. Well, every time you work out, you're wringing that sponge. And then hey, I can soak it back up. But I got to go wring that sponge out. And so, I don't think we do a good job of teaching people how to hurt. In absence of life without stress is death. Like everything in life is a stressor. It's how we cognitively label it. So when we do a good job, and I had to listen to a podcast or it may have been a cassette tape back in the day, but the guy that can endure the most stress receives the most goodies. So in life, honestly, the people that can deal with the most stress are going to typically reap the most rewards. So your ability to compartmentalize and juggle and focus and deal with things as they come at you are going to allow you to succeed. And yet we have, I'm stressed out. Oh, here, take this pill, drink this drink, do this, do that. We tend to want to over medicate and it's like, no, man, oh God, I'm hurting. Take this drug. No, suck it up. Yeah. Right. Vitamin S is one of my favorite things. I tell people, man, how do you still keep going at your age? So I take a lot of vitamin S, and they go, what? Suck it up. What are you going to do? Like, I want to live until I die. So that means going forward, and continuing to do. And hey, I'm blessed. I feel like I'm truly blessed in life. But blessed doesn't mean easy. Everybody, easy street. I don't know what easy street is. Yeah. You get out and then it's enjoying the moment, like being able to sit around, like being able to enjoy this. Yeah. Dude, this is a memory. Like, man, when I was in North Carolina, guess what I did? What a great time, you know? And so being able to capture those moments and be thankful for the moment, I think people lose sight of that. They don't. And
well, it's like martial arts to me now. We were talking a little bit about it. It's like, it's does so much more than just physically learning how to snap someone's arm or break their shoulder, choke them out or anything like that. It's like, to me, like that meditative state of rolling or being in class, like I'm not thinking about anything else that's going on.
Right.
I'm literally thinking about exactly what is in front of me at that time.
You were totally in the moment.
Totally present. And it's like, and you listen to these guys that are big into meditation, and that's literally what you're doing, where you're letting the thoughts pass through your mind, and you're staying, solely focused. Like, you're not letting anything affect you. And so it's like, if I haven't gone for the week or something, and I've been super busy at work, I'm like, I miss it. I'm like, damn, I got to go, because man, like, I need that time away. Even if it's an hour, I need that time away from the thoughts that are constantly. Because I don't know about you, but my mind's. I feel like I've got, these, Budweiser horses running constantly.
Sure.
And so it's like
I can look around. No, dude. Like.
Okay, there you go. Here's an example. These are Budweiser horses going full speed.
Yeah. You got gnarly roads, you got deer heads, you got weighted. No, this is my life. Like, when I tell you, like, I walked in, I went, oh, this is the sign of my people. I mean, I immediately, like, I just relaxed and went, oh, we're in.
Yeah.
And so to me, and what we're describing is the difference between a fighter and a martial artist. Not all martial artists are fighters.
Right.
All right. And I mean, and people do different things because they like it. I mean, you get people that are trashing Aikido, or they trash Tai Chi, or they trash, and it's like, I've come to realize that we're all different, and people do things because they like to do them. Like, who are you to judge? Like,
sure.
It's like fighting efficacy. Well, I tell you what, I spend a lot of time on a gun range. And, I mean, shooting, when it gets right down to it, that shotgun, that 12 gauge, police model I have will settle a lot. I mean, like, there's people can do things because they enjoy doing them.
Right.
And then looking to be better as a person. Like, I know people that have trained for years, and they're still assholes. They're technical assholes. I mean, they may be dangerous.
Yeah.
They're dangerous jerks.
Yeah.
But they're still a jerk.
Yeah.
I think you find betterment if that's what you're looking for. Like, what are you looking for in your training? And when you're looking to be in the moment, when you're looking to be better, when you're looking to kind of find that serenity. And that's, to me, that's what separates. Man, I've known guys that they train because they just like to see the funny look you make when they hit you real hard. What I mean?
Yeah,
They weren't really like, they trained hard and they were dangerous, but it wasn't necessarily about being a better person.
Yeah. And I think that comes along with the growth, though, too, of the sport as well. Like I was telling you, I think it's in the beginning, it was like, I'd leave and go, I choked someone out today. Yeah. Now I don't even know. I'm like, I don't pay attention to it. It's not relevant. It's like me, I'm like, I fucking got here. Today.
I'm here.
I'm so busy. I got all this shit going on. I'm like, I got here and I trained and I feel better and here we are. I'm going to take on the rest of the day. So, it's like it changes. And, when we're at the end of class and we're, leaving for class and we all, we shake hands and stuff like that. And so, like, what I do now with like the brand new white belts, I really feel that they are the most important people in the room, So it's like, I just tell them, keep coming back.
Yeah.
That's it, dude. Just
that's the
back.
whole.
And it's just.
That's the alpha and the omega. And experience is the single greatest predictor of success on the job.
Sure.
So the more experience you get, and then, I encourage everybody to mentor, just like you're taking those guys under your wing by telling them come back. And, being able to mentor and share love and give, because the more you give, the more you get. And
Absolutely.
It's so true.
So true.
In life, not just martial arts, but in life, right? So you take the time to help somebody out that's struggling and give them that, a little bit of positivity and that mental pat on the back. They're looking up to you. You're looking up, and then it just, it helps keep you coming back. It just is, and it's kind of that attitude of gratitude. And I tell you, but man, there's nobody in my gym that's been tapped more than me. I've been doing it longer than anybody. I've been smoked all over the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to Brazil. I was going, well, the one thing about going to Brazil, at least I'm in another country when I get my ass handed to me the way my coaches are going to hand it to me.
Right.
So and the older I get, the more humble I get. It's like, man, things don't work. I don't care how much you train. Like, Father Time is trillions and oh. I mean, nobody escapes life alive, right?
Yeah.
So, but having that appreciation for movement, and I struggle with it. The competitor in me can struggle with that. Like, you know, you say it fast, it don't sound like much, but, you know, there's real times when you go, man, 20 years ago, I'd have spanked him. You know what I mean? And when you see things and then it's gone and you realize, man, I'd have known it was, I would have caught that. I would have hit that. I would have tapped that. I would have done this. I would have done that. And you realize, that's the old man in me.
Right.
And so you constantly have to reinvent yourself as a martial artist. But then, honestly, man, you know, if we're going to grow, we need to constantly reinvent ourselves as human beings.
Absolutely.
You know, my purpose in life and what I do now is not the same as it was 30 years ago. You know, I mean, and it shouldn't be. Like, I would have wasted 30 years of my life. And so creating opportunities for people and creating connections and mentoring and, you know, helping others, that's what I need to do now. You know, and it's being a coach, I spend as much time being a life coach sometimes as I do being a physical coach. And that's what we're supposed to do as we age, you know, and, you know, I'm looking forward, like my next chapter, my oldest son is getting ready to have my first grandbaby. And so, you know, to be grandpa is pretty, but my youngest son is 14. So I'm still, you know, I mean, I got a 30-year-old, a 21-year-old and a 14-year-old. So I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm all over the map, but I'm, so it's exciting. I mean, I'm excited to have a grandson, and I'm excited to, you know, I'm still having tons of fun with my other two kids. I mean, you know, my daughter's in nursing school; she's kicking butt. My youngest son's doing great. He shoots on a trap team.
Right on.
He's got a jiu-jitsu match coming up that he's training for, and you know, I mean, he's got his black belt in Taekwondo and doing great, and you know, was worked out with Bill when you know, does the kickboxing class and wrestled in school and is doing jiu-jitsu. And so, man, what a great, and I think you know, I'm as I age out a little bit, I appreciate those moments with my kids and my family, and you know, moments like that. You just have a greater appreciation when your head's down and you're grinding and running and just, I don't know, you know, you got to kind of step back and go, hey man, this is a cool moment. You know, this is really cool.
Yeah. So, as a kid, man, slow down. You know, one of the biggest things for me is I wish I would have slowed down more, because it's like, dude, I only got 17 years or so to be a kid. You know, I have the rest of my fucking life to be an adult.
Yeah, and I wanted to be an adult so bad, so fast.
Bad. I was like, man, like, you know, wait till you have the responsibilities. You know what I mean? Like, one of the things I like is, the sayings I like is like, you know, boys do what they want to, men do what they have to. And it's like, once you get to that responsibility level, you know, especially having a kid, because that's a whole nother fire that, you know, you're blessed with. And it's like, you know, you start looking at things as like, you know, today's a gift, you know what I mean? It's not a given right, you know what I mean? And so, I don't know, I guess it really just, that's why I'm so thankful for the martial arts industry, and I've stuck around, right? Because like, that's what it's given me, you know, because I was, you know, and really I kind of like tricked myself into I started a long time ago, took some classes, bounced around, didn't take it serious back in California. And then I did take some classes in Springfield. And then when I got here, we were getting ready to have our son, or it was a year before we had him. But the reason I got into getting back into jiu-jitsu was I needed something to train year round for hunting. Because I was really getting serious in out-of-state hunting, going out-of-state. And if you've ever been out west and you've hunted in these massive mountains and things like that, man, you can't hunt. You know, if your hunt's coming up in October, you can't start training in the beginning of September. It ain't gonna work. Yeah. So it was like I needed something to like maintain myself and hold myself accountable and be a little more disciplined. Because if I get that draw in Colorado and I'm hunting at 8,500 feet of elevation, that's a different world. And you can't really train for elevation, but it sure does make a difference when you have good cardio, you know, and you can plug up these mountains carrying a 40-pound pack. You have the mental capability of getting up there and, pushing yourself through tough times.
See, I'm pumped because I'm getting to go to Montana turkey hunting here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah. If we're going after Miriam's. And so I'm going to the Texas Panhandle.
You travel every year you go out to these places?
I've been going to the Texas Panhandle for a long time. Some guys out there.
You deer hunt out there too, or?
No, just turkey hunt. I hunt Rios. I do most of my turkey hunting there in Arkansas. I'm in a couple of leases in Arkansas and hunt there. I got to go. I went up to Canada, did a whitetail hunt up in Saskatchewan, and that was good soil Saskatchewan. Man, it's at the end of the paved road. It was pretty cool. I mean, we're just right by the Northwest Territories. I mean, you're up north.
Wow.
It's crazy how far up that was. The deer were ginormous.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the buck I shot was probably 340 pounds, 330 pounds. I mean, they cut it in half with the chainsaw and they hung it like beef. Like it was huge. I mean, in Arkansas, we're used to seeing, you got a 200-pound buck. It's a big buck, and this thing. Yeah. I mean, it was like deer on steroids. It was huge.
Yeah, it's crazy the size of those animals.
Yeah,
out there, man.
Yeah. They're hardy. The winters are so brutal.
They got to eat like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, if they're not massive like that, they're going to get. Sure. Everything wants to eat a deer. I mean, you got wolves and stuff up there that.
Cougars, mountain lions.
Yeah, and in the weather, just the weather. I mean, it's just so cold that if they're not hardy, they don't survive. Yeah. So they've got to pack it on. They just have to. But no, I'm excited to go. I've never been out to Montana, and so
where are you going in Montana?
We're flying into Billings and then driving about an hour north.
Okay.
I think it's Round Top. I'm wanting to say Montana. To the outfitter that we're using up there. So I'm going to go up and try to pop a couple of Miriams. I've hunted Nebraska a couple of times. But I really enjoy the Texas Panhandle. The guys out there, Justice, takes care of us. And we've hunted a couple of different, in this one area quite a bit. So Rios are interesting birds. I mean, our Easterns in Arkansas are tough birds. Yeah. It's just the Eastern and Arkansas Easterns, they're just wary. And
how they are here.
Yeah. They're tough birds to hunt. They're just tough birds to hunt. And, they don't do the predator control. So you don't have people trapping bobcats, coons, coyotes. So the hatches, our turkey population is strong. I think we have more coons and more bobcats, more coyotes.
Armadillos too, right?
Armadillos,
not that they're going to do anything.
They're not, but raccoons are hard on nests. Bobcats are
sure.
turkey killing machines. And so, but the turkeys in Arkansas they seem to be really wary. So I'm proud of every Eastern I've ever shot, but I'd like to go. I want to get my, and I've killed a Miriam, I've killed Rio. I want to go to Florida and shoot an Osceola, and then I want to go get a Gould's along the northern Mexican border, either going into Mexico or, I'd kind of like to do that whole thing. So,
yeah, we're leaving next week or the week after. I go down to a place down in eastern North Carolina. It's a buddy of mine owns it. It's an outfitter's place, Cut a Whiskey. It's awesome. Yeah. It is so cool. Yeah. That's kind of the only outfitter that I've ever really dealt with because most of the stuff I draw tags for over the counter, but I think now more because of the hunting population, there's more hunters now and it's just harder to, navigate. It's like I'm probably going to start trying to get connections with more outfitters. It's easier. I don't have time to
that's the hard part.
I want to hunt like hell, and here I've got some nice places to hunt. I got several hundred acres to hunt and stuff like that, but they're real weary. It's a different,
No, I get it.
It's tough hunting here for turkeys, So especially with the land that I have, to hunt, it's pretty tough. Yeah. So I just go out there.
I've been to South Africa twice.
Have you really?
Yeah.
How was that?
Oh, it was great.
Really?
It was absolutely awesome.
Tell me about that.
The game, when you hunt in Arkansas, it's like, okay, well, you got a deer. You might see a bear. I've seen a bear before. Our bear population has really exploded, and they've actually seasons and stuff now, but that's pretty rare. Pig, coon, bobcat, coyote. There you need a book because there's a herd of these go running by, and you're like, what the hell was that? Those are, blue wildebeest or black wildebeest or Nyala, red hartebeest. There's this, Diker. There's, I mean, you can't keep up. It's crazy, and it's like they give you a menu. Like the outfitter we used, you got 5 animals. Gemsbok, Blessbok, Springbok, kudu, and an impala, and then you have a whole menu of stuff, and some of it was out of the range of what your average karate guy in Arkansas is going to afford. I'm like, I saved my nickels and dimes for a long time to get over there, but they managed the game. The outfitters over there, I mean, it's a process. You're not just like raising your shingle. You don't go to Walmart and buy your outfitter's license and now you're an outfitter. I mean, there's tests because there's animals over there that will eat you. I mean, it's a little different. Yeah. So they're licensed and trained up, and they manage the game. I mean, that's a big industry for them, and so it's in their deal to. I mean, it's in their benefit to take care of the animals, and we brought home nice animals, and we got to eat lots of game. So we're going to cook some. So we want to eat it. What I mean? Like that's what we're here to do. No, don't get it twisted, guys. We want to try this out, and it was awesome. I mean, for enjoying hunting, and then you're selecting and picking and culling, and they manage everything really, really, really well, and so the life of the herd is really important. I mean, they want to manage it and bring it along, and it was plentiful, and so it was really, really. I thought it was a cool experience.
Did they donate the meat like to tribes and things like that? I hear a lot of people saying they do that. I mean,
yes, some of the meat is donated and some of it's sold. I mean, they can sell wild game over there, and so I mean, they immediately. I mean, it's taken care of and processed, and guys come and get it, and some of it's going to charitable contribution. Some of it's getting sold.
Okay.
It's interesting, and I mean, you're talking. Some of these animals are elk size. I mean, they're huge. I mean, they're so big animals, and there's a lot of meat, and so it doesn't go to waste. None of it goes to waste. I mean, it's all taken care of, and my wife said basically to go back over there, I'm gonna have to get her a bigger house because I mean. You walk in, and I've got African animals and Arkansas animals, and I've got, even in my office at my gym, I've got a Gemsbok and a kudu because the horns are so tall. I don't have any place, and I'm stressing because the one animal I haven't gotten to hunt that I really want to is I want to go elk hunting, and I'm like, where am I going to put? Even a European mount. I'm like looking around going, okay.
You'll find a place.
Where, it's got to happen, and I mean, I know what's going to happen is that I'm going to go out on this turkey hunt out west and go, I have a feeling something's going to grab my soul and go, okay, you've got to come back out. So, and it's funny to me, it's where I commune, like, I tell people all the time, I mean, you can ruin a perfectly good hunt when you knock down an animal because that's when the work begins. Yeah. But we eat, like, I mean, it doesn't go to waste, and I mean, this is, my kids know this is where meat comes from, and this is how we're, what we do. And I cook a lot of it and do it regular. But that's where I commune with nature, I mean, it's when I slow down and people talk about multitasking. Multitasking is really a lie. Our brains are not designed for that. I mean, we do better when we lock into something and can stay focused. Now, we might focus on this and then focus on this, but you're not focusing on 3 and 4 things at the same time.
Correct.
It's just not the way we're designed. So in having that downtime and recharging your batteries and having some meditative moments where you're, what's important to you? I mean, there's questions. I don't think people honestly have enough conversations with themselves. in terms of what are you asking yourself as a human being? Like, what's important? And in just talking, we've talked about stuff like, I can tell that your health and wellness is important to you. Your family's important to you. Your child's important to you. And, you've got these things. I can, as a human being, as a person,
right.
You have these things that are important to you and interesting to you, and you're a driven individual. And you get to determine those when you're sitting on a deer stand by yourself.
Right.
When you're walking and glassing and spotting and stalking, and you're in the moment, and there's a certain sense of life that happens.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me, and you have those moments, and because there's a lot of duck hunting is really big in Arkansas, and it's a really social hunt. Turkey hunting is very soft. I mean, that's not a team sport.
No, no.
It's so different. It's so much more hardcore.
You and the boys and 12 of you are not going turkey hunting together.
No. In fact, most of the time you're not trying to hide where you're going turkey hunting.
Right,
It's like, oh, you're hearing one gobble over there. No, I'm not. No, there's no. There's no birds over there. No. So yeah, it's different in deer hunting and the culture of it. And, for us, it's the RV and, it's our campground and it's, riding four-wheelers and, making s'mores and poking. And my youngest son is all about deer camp life.
That's the best, though.
Oh,
it's the best.
It's great. I mean, my whole family, we've grown up and all my kids grew up hunting and man, I'm doing stuff like this. I travel. I'm here, and then I'm going to be in Jacksonville, Florida, and then I'm going to be down in Brazil, and I've got this camp or that camp. I'm doing this, doing that, and then, man, the breaks, November, December, and into first part of January. Bro, I want to hunt. Every weekend I want to take my family. We're going to go, to the duck camp or the deer camp, and we're going to. And then I try to grind it out until April, and I get a little turkey hunting in, and then we'll grind and get a little fishing in the summer. I don't get as much fishing in as I'd really like to.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I mean, I love to fish.
I do too.
But I pretty much saved my hooky days.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take off.
Here.
Yeah.
We're all about it, man. Like, especially now, my son's within age of hunting. We're gonna take him out for his first turkey hunt here in a couple weeks, and but he's been with me. He was with me last year. Well, he was on probably 6 or 7, and dude, it's crazy how these kids lock into, and they're like dead quiet. Like he's quiet, and he starts telling me what.
Yeah,
Dad, you can't be moving your feet like that.
Yeah, I love it.
And I'm like,
I love it.
Yeah. And then I took my nephew out for the first night, killed his first deer, and I was there. And I would probably say that was cooler than the first time I killed a deer.
Yeah.
To watch him, I was so pumped. And him, he's just like a video game, no problem, And so but yeah, now it's like and honestly, a lot of all the businesses and stuff like that have been because I want to be able to hunt. I don't want to be locked into 9 to 5.
Right.
I mean, you are as a business owner, you're locked into 9 to 5, whether you like it or not. But it's like now I have the freedom to be like, okay, cool, I'm hunting all next week. You know what I mean? We're shutting it down. I'm going to hunt all week, every day. And so, it's given me an opportunity to do that because this is the life I want. This is what I love. I love the outdoors. The mindset behind it is absolutely amazing. Like, yeah, you're right. You do. Like, you think about. You get out there in tree stand, you're sitting in a saddle bow hunting during bow season, and you can hear everything, and you know what it is. Yeah. You hear birds chirping in the distance, you're like, I bet that's a deer. Yep, sure as shit it is. It's like these are things you pick up, and in the meantime, there's probably a lot not going on.
Yeah.
And you're like, why did I say that to that dude today? That was stupid. I should have never said that. So you get to think a lot of self-reflection, much needed self-talk.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't get that when you're at the house and you got cooked dinner and the kids running around and their phones ringing and TV's going and you just, you don't really get, but that's, for us, like, I think that's like, that's why we hunt, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
for,
it is, dude.
that kind of stuff.
It really
you
is.
know?
No, dude. Well, you ever make it out to Arkansas?
Dude, I'm coming. Don't tell me.
Get
I'll
a duck hunt or a deer hunt. You
yeah,
just
I'd love to
pick
go
your
out there.
poison, and
Yeah.
we'll go.
Yeah.
You know, I love it. Treat you some jiu-jitsu. We'll shoot some guns.
Dude,
We'll get some hunting in.
Yeah,
So
Arkansas is beautiful. Missouri, all that whole southern part there, man. I'd love to come out there. But anyways, man. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on, brother. And I think we went through the list of everything.
Oh yeah, dude.
And
great time, man.
I'm glad Steve set us up, and thanks to him for this happening. And he's been a real a prominent piece in my life, and has really helped shape who I am, whether it be discussions with business or just my training in general. And so I have a lot of respect for him. And,
Salt of the earth, dude.
Yeah.
Great family.
And where and
I've cornered every member of his family.
Yeah, he did tell me that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
His wife, his wife and his daughter are the only two mother-daughter world kickboxing champions that I know of. And I was blessed to work with them both.
That's
and
awesome.
His son. We've had a great relationship. I feel really blessed to have them in my life.
Yeah. And I can't really, words can't put into that, friendship that I have with them, and, over the years we've developed. And so, I just, I'm going to take it and pass it on. You know what I mean? That's kind of my goal is to keep the momentum going and giving this back to somebody else that needs it, so.
Powerful.
But thanks again, Danny. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
On to the next one, bro.
All right.
All right, dude. Thanks.